Hello and welcome to another brief episode of DTC, episode 43. Just a few things I wanted to throw out there and get some input on. Firstly, there is something that I've been monitoring. Hang on, safe. There we go. Something that myself and the group have been monitoring for about 2.5 months now, I'd say, is this website, which is Null School, earth.nullschool.net. And one of the things you can look at on here is wind, which is what I'm looking at. Or under mode, it says air, and this is at 10 HPA, which is the highest altitude. This vortex that you're seeing, we noticed it develop, like I said, about 2.5 months ago, I think. And watching it get stronger. The white colour you're seeing is the highest speed. You can see the colour graph. It's been getting faster and faster and faster. It's also been dropping in terms of if you come down closer and closer. What we've also been watching form is the vortex itself gets stronger with each step down, and the colours come in, which means the winds are getting faster and faster. This is around Antarctica. Okay. We've been monitoring Australia, obviously, and watching it creep further and further up as well. Even down on surface level, which is what this one is. That is becoming more and more uniform. And if I go around to the north, we go back up to 10. Okay, that's changed again. Wow. From when I last looked at the north. Because it was a lot weaker and it took longer to form this vortex. That's pretty wild because there wasn't so much green there last I looked, nor was it as all-encompassing. Didn't go to the edges. So this has changed again, and we're starting to get some of these colours around here. Okay, so don't know what it means, just something we've been monitoring. And if anybody else has got any input on that before we move on to the next subject, let me know. JJ, go for it.
That's way more uniform on the north.
Isn't it?
That's much more uniform. It was much more broken up, much less of a consistent pattern, and it didn't spread all the way to the horizon or the outside edges like that. That's starting to mirror what's going on down south. Big time.
Yeah, that's a big change since I looked last.
So the diameters have been increasing, both north and south. And the other thing I would note is that when we first noticed it, the centers they were near, but not really right over the poles, and they have been quite stable. It's kind of slowly migrated to their, not precisely, but very close to centered over the poles, where they have been staying for weeks and weeks now. The center of the southern vortex has been opening, and the northern vortex has been strengthening in speed over the last week and a half.
The other way you can look at this, I'll just go back to the map for a second, is you can put it onto P and E, have a similar view. Which is another nice way to look at it. And yeah, this line here in the middle that separates the two flows has actually gotten thinner. Has it not? If I look at it that way.
Yes.
It's almost like the two are about to meet. And we've got them going that way, and what's going to happen if they meet? Because that has literally done this. Okay, interesting.
When they meet, you'll create eddies, which is you're kind of seeing now in the blue areas and stuff. You get little small pools, little rotational pools as they friction against each other. So I would suspect to see less laminar flow. In other words, it won't be quite as even going left to right or right to left, and you'll see these little, well, they call them eddies, but they're like a little vortex.
Almost looks to me like it's going around in a circle if you could expand that field to the left and right.
What do you mean?
Well, if I just expanded my vision to the left and right of the screen, you see where the pink and it's like it's going around in a circle. If you just follow the pink, it's going around to the left on the top, to the right on the bottom, and I don't know, it just looked like a disc, like record player, and then the circle in the middle with the blue. I don't know, just something that hit me, and I'm wondering if any of this has to do with the dome coming down to where it was at, but it's continuing past the point where I believe it stopped, right? And also the thinning of the dome.
I haven't had an update from Peter on that since Wednesday or Tuesday when we recorded the last one. Okay. So for those who want to keep an eye on that or have any ideas about what that could all be leading to, interesting. Next thing is there's been quite a few YouTube channels, Mr. BB, WSO and others who have been for some time now monitoring and measuring UV. Excuse me, and it's getting higher and higher and higher. And one of the things that struck me the other night out of a WSO video, which is the anti-parasitic nature of UV. Now, if you've been following these for a while, you know that we've been talking about the virus and the cleansing and killing off of the virus. And is UV actually playing a part in that? And the other thing about UV, and I'll bring up a couple of things again. UV light provides rapid, effective inactivation of microorganisms through a physical process. When bacteria, viruses, and protozoa are exposed to the germicidal wavelengths of UV light, they are rendered incapable of reproducing and infecting. Is this how we're cleaning things up? Is this how we're getting rid of the virus? Just to throw it out there, see what you guys think. The other thing about this is that there have been, as we all know, a range of symptoms that are pretty widespread. And it says here that ultraviolet radiation induced dehydration of minerals. Everything from cramps, headaches, nausea, fatigue, all of these common symptoms that we're experiencing right now can fall under the heading of dehydration. Lulu also said way back in the beginning that you need more water, drink lots and lots of water. Water's going to play a big part. Is the UV dehydrating us in the process? This is why we're feeling the symptoms that we're feeling. But also, as a byproduct of all of that, if the UV is the virus that is within us all and within everything reacting to the UV, which is why we're seeing some of the outbursts of crazy behavior, that psychopathic, narcissistic behavior that is associated with the virus that's being triggered as it's being pulled out or cleaned up. I've mentioned before that I moved here in September, I think, how quiet it was compared to where I used to live. And for the first 4 or 5 months, I don't think I heard a siren. And then one day there was a police chase that went straight past the house. And from that day, there has been a build-up, and that was probably in February or March, to the point now where there are a minimum of 3, usually 4, 5 or 6 sirens that I hear every day, mostly ambulances that are in earshot of this house. And when I leave the house, I have to go, there's usually one police or more than one ambulance going past. So something's going on there too. And is it all reactions? I mean, you can spend 5 minutes on Facebook and you'll see the chaos. The cognitive dissonance that's going on, the division, I mean, that's going on. Can't imagine there's anything, any subject matter left that hasn't been used as an attempt to divide us at the moment. So anyway, is it all connected? And is the UV playing a very big part in all of this? That's just what I want to throw out there. And I want to get some feedback from you guys, or some input, or anything else you want to say or add to this. No?
Well, I just thought about the 3ZB and how the what I thought felt what was happening was that the UV was activating the 3ZB, which is an organic cleansing agent. You know, because UV can have damaging effects as well, but if it's activating the 3ZB, which is therefore able to clean out the body, because in its organic form, I think they're connected as well. I'm not a chemist. It would be really nice for somebody who is, that could take a, 3ZB molecule and find out what UV does to it, or I don't know.
Yeah,
like that.
Agreed. Is there anything? Oh, who's going to do a quick search and find if there's anything online about how 3ZB reacts to UV? Yeah. Where's our Dr. Phil? Okay, so just a quick one. Just wanted to throw that out there. Oh, one other thing, and may well be connected to the UV as well. But we've been talking about, especially in the US, for those members that I work with who are US based, they're all saying the same thing, that in the US, you guys are experiencing fall type weather and fall, what's going on with the plants and the trees, and you've got your leaves are turning and dropping. And fall is that sort of end of life cycle phase, the dying off phase. It's not happening. I know that Europe right now seems to be having extremely hot summer. We seem to have missed fall altogether, at least up here where I am. For those, I don't know, we've got a couple in Melbourne. Did you guys get a autumn this year? Because we went straight from screaming hot weather to freezing cold weather. There was nothing in between. And I don't know whether it's just the UV playing a part, although I feel like it is. What were we saying earlier, guys, about the waves that Russ talked about? Is this just another cleansing wave, or?
I was asking the question, or putting out a very simple question about life cycles, and I think I was saying, could the fact that we are experiencing, like here, to me it's very fall-like. It just feels like fall. It has the feel of fall. It's in the air, it's in the trees, and that might be just me. But then other people are saying, you know, I'm not seeing that there. So I was wondering if it could be coming in some kind of waves, if it's maybe clearing out things in waves or changing things in waves. Did I say that right? Is that kind of along the lines of where we were going?
Okay, so I've had one from Melbourne saying very little autumn, and one from Perth saying same in Perth, no autumn. And someone else, where would this friend be, Violet? When I got home, my yard looked like it had snowed. All the cotton from all of the cotton trees discharged today. Looks like all at once. What time of the year would that normally happen? So we've got a parasitic die-off plus dehydration would lead to a toxic situation in the body. Much water would be needed for detoxing. Michigan. Huh.
And I'm also wondering how this is connected to time speeding up.
Yeah, I feel like I've lived 3 weeks this last week.
Agreed.
Late June and early July is normal for the cotton, but in California, May to June. So it's not the same season anywhere you look, pretty much. And not all at once. Okay. Yeah, these timeline things, it's like fast track and go slow and going between the two. So if anybody else is experiencing that too. All right, I just wanted to put out this quick one. See what comes back. Thank you very much. See you next time. Hello again. Sorry, this is a PS. I seem to be making a habit of this, but there is something I forgot to mention. I received a message that I want to read to you guys in regards to the greatest flash the universe has ever seen from a friend of mine. And it says this. The computer term flashing the BIOS involves upgrading the most fundamental part of the computer, the very most beginning part, even before the operating system loads. The BIOS is sort of hidden from the operating system and governs the most basic functions of the computer. It even starts the process that allows the operating system to load. When a major update is needed or when some major corruption has happened, either as a last resort or a major upgrade, one flashes the BIOS. Flashing the BIOS is also very risky and if not done properly, could brick the computer. If it is successful, it upgrades the most fundamental aspect of the computer, the BIOS, which is the aspect that communicates and initiates the operating system. The universe is about to experience the greatest, biggest flash ever. Is there a connection? And you are living in a computer. So to my techies, even as well and as simply as that was put, I understood the basics about it. But what more can you add to that in terms of relating it to our environment? Because when I first read it, I read bios because I didn't really understand what I was reading, which I applied to us as in bios. Biographies, our stories, our histories, and there may be something in that as well. But who have I got? Who wants to come out and elaborate on this for me? JJ, come on.
I was going to wait for Daryl, but okay.
You see your footnote.
The BIOS is the most fundamental aspect of a computer. It deals with the hardware. It deals with the stuff, not code, not function, but how do I operate? In fact, you can say the first thing that happens is the BIOS is read and then it knows it's a computer. Before that, it has no awareness at all. It can't do anything. No BIOS.
That's when it becomes self-aware, in other words. That's when it,
in a sense, yeah.
it has a moment where it goes, I am.
It becomes aware that it is and what it can do in terms of the resources it has available. The operating system, and it also triggers certain portions of the hardware to initiate the learning, in other words, loading the operating system to do more stuff. That happens later. The BIOS has to initiate that. So yeah, it's real important and very fundamental, and for the most part, invisible to most folks.
If you wanted to completely install a new operating system, i.e. from free will to freedom, how would the BIOS play a part, if at all?
One way, at least from my perspective, one way to view the BIOS is it's kind of be representative by the DNA. It's the basic fundamental what it is that enables the rest of the operating functions to come online and utilize the resources. In other words, how long is your arm? How much muscle strength have you got? You know, what's your hair color, eye color? Those are functions of DNA, and it's kind of, you can kind of think of it like BIOS. They don't quite match up, but keep in mind that the computer architecture is based on human functionality and how we operate. Computers they use us as a model to build the first computer. Let's put it that way. And BIOS, being what it is kind of like our DNA.
We don't name anything by accident or flippantly. BIOS, BIOS, BIOS. Okay, Phil just wrote, BIOS software is stored on a non-volatile ROM chip on the motherboard. In modern computer systems, the BIOS contents are stored on a flash memory chip so that the contents can be rewritten without removing the chip from the motherboard. This allows BIOS software to be easily upgraded to add new features or fix bugs, but can make the computer vulnerable to BIOS rootkits. Okay, what are rootkits? Rootkits.
You really don't want to go there. That just gets way too techie. Just way too techie.
But what Phil, I think, is getting at is the original virus would have been flashed onto the BIOS originally.
You can corrupt BIOS. And one of the tools that a computer fixer guy does is he goes and he cleans up the BIOS. You can actually reset the BIOS. But if you screw with it and make a permanent alteration, then it's stuck in there. And the only thing you can do is completely erase the BIOS and start over again, which is a tricky, like your message said, tricky operation, because if you screw up, it's not a computer. It's never going to be a computer. It's DOA. It's just a pile of pieces. And that's all it'll ever be. So you've got to be careful with the BIOS, because it is so fundamental that it defines what the box or whatever it is becomes.
An interesting little footnote to that. If you have a hard drive that has a virus on it, and you put a second hard drive in with a clean version of what you're working with, you can actually reprogram the BIOS to turn around and ignore the first hard drive and say, only look at the second hard drive, and only I can write to this hard drive. No one else can write to the hard drive. Only I can.
Yep. Now, BIOS stands for originally Basic Input Output System. That's what the BIOS originally meant.
What you just said, Gerald, could have been A, how this was hijacked, but also B, how we created a copy, and C, how we're fixing it. That could
I
apply
think it's
all three.
all the above.
I can take it to the esoteric, non-techie level,
Go,
much more highly spiritual level.
go highly.
Well, I, like you, Lisa, went straight to bios, our stories, right? And while we were just talking right now, it pinged me that a while ago, months ago, we talked about Enoch, okay, the story of Enoch, and how he was taken up and dictated to these stories, okay? And it's like, then once things were written down, it was like before it was written down, it was okay, but once everything was put into writing, like writing code, these stories were inputted into the BIOS or whatever. Those were our stories that were, those were stories that were inputted that are not necessarily ours. And there's all this confusion about what's our true history, right? Okay, so there's that. And then there's all this emphasis right now on us needing to be here in order to retain our memories or to bring our memories back. And these are the stories of us, all of us, okay? And wouldn't those stories need to be clean, they need to be free of the virus, okay? Wouldn't that serve, techie guys, would that serve as the new BIOS system or part of it? Or would that be where it would enter into the situation? Anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Yep.
Here's an interesting thing.
Well, like Lisa said, nothing's accidentally named anywhere. So thank you, JJ. That's the shortest answer I think I've ever gotten.
Yep.
Here's an interesting thing. If we are in a construct here, and I honestly, every time that Curtis shows the Schumann resonance, it pings me that what those big giant spikes are rewriting the BIOS. It just looks like it. It looks like a pulse is coming in of information, of frequency. It's rewriting this construct. So that way the rules are now changed.
We were talking about that, and I was sort of off the cuff wondering, boy, wouldn't it be really neat if we could see inside those big teardrop things and see the structure? Because all it is just a big whiteout. It's overload. But if we could actually drill then into that and see what's going on in terms of frequency, when and where and how and which and why and all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of information in there, and the instruments aren't sensitive enough or adjustable enough to be able to turn down the volume enough to be able to see the structure and what's going on inside. That would be really cool if we could do that, but not likely.
Okay. Is there anything else to add before we end this PS? We'll just throw that out there and see what happens. Okay, so for all you techies out there, what do you think? All right, thank you. Sorry to do this, but PSS. There is something that came up quite a while ago now. In some of the messages from Lilu, there was references to 01010101E. And then we in computer code, the E is actually I'm probably going to bastardize this, but it creates a loop, right? And go back to the beginning. And that 0101 was in terms of messages from home, was connected to the construct itself. Then a message came through a little while back that actually had an I at the end. 0101010101 I. And okay, now again, I'm going to ask the techies to please explain, because it's in relationship to a few things. Daryl, can you just repeat what you said in regards to the I? And then we'll go to what AJ said.
Okay, yeah, because JJ cleared it up really well. Okay, so how I started that was the I could be a reference to a user in Linux. So in Linux, you sudo something to run a program, and you could do it in different ways. You can run it with God privileges, which would be, I can't remember, I think it's -R or something like that. I could be wrong on that. So you run the program with -R, and it runs it. You run it with God privileges. If you run it with -I, you run the program with God privileges, but you also run it with his environment as well. So the program is allowed to go into the kernel, or the kernel is allowed to pull out other things within its realm and use it to run the program. JJ could probably clear that up nicely.
So God code, God privileges means?
And God environment.
And God environment. What does that mean to you in this Linux computer techie talk?
Me or him?
No, in terms of what Daryl said, what does having God privileges really mean? What does that mean?
So go, JJ.
No, go ahead.
No, you could probably explain this one better after you, sir.
In Linux, there are levels of security. And at the very top level that has access to everything, unlimited access with the absolute most rights possible. In other words, there's nothing it can't do. It's called a super user. And sudo, S-U-D-O, super user do is the command to run a program, do this process, whatever. And it's no holds barred. I've got access. I can make this happen. Go. No, nothing's going to get in the way. So a super user command like do, and then you throw the little switches at the end, the R, the C, the I, whatever, provides additional resources to make sure that whatever you tell the computer to do, because you're the super user, it's going to get done regardless. Doesn't matter any other processes, doesn't matter any limitations, get it done, period.
Okay. So if we put that piece together with the other piece that we just talked about, with the flashing of the BIOS, and it was that's right, it was referred to as an evacuation code. 101I refers to a molecule, which when you look at it, is two 3ZB molecules put together. So if we put those three elements together, does it give us a story, or is it just three really cool, interesting little pieces of information that we haven't quite put together yet? Are we going to need time to work on this one, or does anything immediately come to mind?
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to crank on the brain cells on that one. I mean, there's probably a link, but it's tenuous right now, at least in my mind.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, it's also dealing with different layers. It's the pseudo super God mode is hard drive level. The BIOS is the device that controls the hard drive. So there's different levels to all of this, and it's going to be how it all ties in together and what it looks like, and how exactly what what Sony was saying there, how it correlates into the possibility of the Schumann resonance, and if it is information coming down. it's going to be interesting to look into. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So, because you also felt a connection between the Schumann resonance bursts, these teardrops that we're getting, and flashing the BIOS, right?
Yeah, it just, those flashes that are coming down look like bursts of information coming in at certain speeds.
To a certain extent, the flashing the BIOS itself, super user, they're all similar, just on different layers and different levels. So they're all in parallel, but there's more to the picture. It's not enough data to actually build a pattern out of. It's a hint of it.
Okay, if we also throw in multiple light sources. Now, which gets back to our earlier conversation, probably wasn't on this, about the physicality of everything, or lack of. I mean, what's being seen in a very physical 3D sense as 2 or 3 different light sources that we have now. But in a computer game environment, I'm seeing them all as metaphors for something that's happening at code level. But what, I don't know, I probably just confused myself even more. Threw too many things in the pot. All right, thank you. That probably will be the last.